All right, so this is part three of the deck tech series that I'm doing for the Bravo deck I ran at a Road to Nationals and took first place. So in part one, we went over what the deck was, the core of the deck, the sideboard, and just alternative cards. Part two was going through kind of play lines, just in general how I play the deck, and some kind of tips for turn to turn play, and going through pivoting, or at least how I define pivoting. And now part three is probably what everyone wants to know, is just matchups. Matchups, how I sideboard, how I play into them. So this again is not telling everyone how to play Bravo. There's many different ways to play any hero. This is just how I play Bravo and how I'm playing him into different matchups. I'm not the most experienced player in the world. I've been playing for almost a year now. Going into this and trying to be as competitive as I can, and going in actually into the judge program. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I mean, I don't have thousands of games under my belt, but at least I've been playing as competitively as I can and practicing with teammates, to be as competitive as I can. So in this, I'm going to go through basically all 12 heroes. So I have them all lined up on the side here. I'm going to blitz over the easy ones, that you probably won't see in Road to Nationals or any major events, or they'll just be less likely. We have Tales of Aria coming up in a month ish. So I'm sure the meta is going to shake up. But basically, I'm going to go through each hero, show what I sideboard, and then discuss how I plan on playing against them. And the major thing just about playing matchups and doing any sideboarding is the game is not won on who has the better deck or whose deck is better suited to beat the other. It's just not a thing when that you should be considering when you're playing just any TCG. It's how the person pilots the deck. So you don't need to focus on, all right, so I need to choose this card and this card's better against this hero and therefore I should win. That's just not how it works. It should be sideboarding to hedge your bets, and then playing the game based off of what you know is in your deck, how your opponent's playing, and you're really doing a lot of decision making on the fly. There is no like rocks paper scissors on who wins based on what cards you pick. It's how you play what you get. So at least with how I'm playing, I'm usually thinking a couple turns ahead and trying to set up all those double haymaker turns, just keep pressuring cards out of their hand. So that's the core play line for the deck, is always just trying to go 2 to 3 attacks in a row, and then you back off when you get some bad hands and go into hammer mode, and then you look for that pivot and then go back into attack mode and throw a couple more attacks at them and drain more cards out of their deck. So I'm going to go through each one, and I'll just talk through what I sideboard and how I'm looking to play into it. So the first one is Bravo, and I'm pulling up some sideboard notes on the side screen. So first off is the mirror. I personally hate the mirror. It's actually the one matchup that I hate playing the absolute most, and it's really because these disruptive attacks are actually even more effective on another Bravo because Bravo's cards are so expensive. So any sort of disruption is just really painful to deal with. So I really hate going into a Bravo mirror. So when I'm going into Bravo, I'm cutting Rouse. Let's flip these. And I'm bringing in, what, 3 Staunch, if I can flip these right, and the Extra Remembrance. So I'm actually going up to, is it 61 cards? And the reason I'm flipping them, I also have on the side, and I'll probably put it in the comments of the video. When I do a sideboard strategy, I also have all the ratios of my deck listed out. Primarily, it's 3 cost, and then blue cost, and then next to that, I have like the average cost of cards, and then the average pitch of the deck. So that way, I'm trying to avoid over sideboarding and skewing numbers way too far, because you can over sideboard if like you're going into a matchup and you're expecting your deck to perform with like my baseline is 65% blues. So that's the 38 38 blues. If I'm sideboarding out a couple blues and then just jamming in more reds, like I can't expect my deck to always just be churning out blues for me to pitch. So it's a good habit and a good practice to just know set up your sideboard and then run the ratios. So back to Bravo. Um, I bring in the staunch response and the extra remembrance. So this matchup's just a gigantic grind where you're trying to just not lose too many cards to their disruption. Command and Conquer's Disables, Corrupting Crush. So the staunch response is in there just to get you into those defense reactions that are high enough to stop the crushes, and the extra remembrance is also if you're on the aggressive side, just throwing command and conquers and crippling crushes, trying to drain cards out of them. Having the second one in there is really good just to get them back and then just keep churning out pressure. I leave the potion in, leave all the pummels in because if you're on the aggressive side, it's actually fairly easy to maintain the tempo if you get some okay hands, because when you're knocking cards out of your opposing Bravo, the only thing they're coming back at you with is a hammer, really. So there isn't a whole lot that they're doing to you. So that's kind of that matchup. It's just a gigantic slog. I really dislike playing it just because of how painful a lot of these attacks are. Next up, we're going to Dori. There's Axe's Dori that's floating around. I have played against it 3 times now, and I'm not afraid of it. It's just vanilla damage. So Axe's Dori is just trying to go as very wide as they can, and then just push just a ton of vanilla damage on you. The only thing with when they're doing that, it's just vanilla damage again. So when you can actually pivot into attack mode, your stuff's scarier than theirs, and then they just turn into, all right, I swing with an axe, and then I swing with another axe, and then I'm done. So not that scary. Dawnblade, on the other hand, is the scary part. The biggest thing with Dori is it's another grind game. So I'm actually bringing in, let's see, we're cutting Rouse again, and we're bringing in Fates, and we're bringing in Staunches. Basically, just trying to fight all the attack reactions and prevent the Dawnblade triggers because they're usually just trying to go over top of your defenses. So it's just basically a block up and outlast, and you should be counting when you see the Steelblade Supremacies, when you see the Singing Steel Blades. Watch out for Route. Not everyone really plays that, but it's if you start seeing them with a lot of blues or like throwing out energy potions, you can kind of guess that there's a Route coming or there's a Route in their deck. But really, it should be blocking up, blocking up, and trying to stop the Dawnblades. The biggest thing is this is an entirely experience game plan where either you're not blocking at all, they're just swinging in for 3, and if they have go again, they have go again, and then maybe you block out. Or you're going all in on the first block and then dumping, like, they'll swing for a Dawnblade with Warrior's Valor, so that's 6 and potentially with go again. If you just go for the 6, they may just go over the top of you with like a Singing Steel Blade and Iron Song or just any attack reaction. So you should be either like fully committing to a full like 9 block to just stop the Dawnblade from getting go again, or you go for the 6 but know you have a backup for 4. And really the 4 is specifically for Singing Steel Blade into Iron Song response. That's kind of the scariest thing, or just Singing Steel Blade into any attack reaction. Most people just assume it's a 3. Like, they're going to attack reaction, they're going to give it +3. But because they're Singing Steel Blade, it's actually, that's the scarier one, and it's +1 and then another 3. Let's see. The other stuff with Dori is, I'm trying to think if it's really just they're going tall and trying to go over the top of you, and then you're looking for your pivot points in the taking a couple swings, and then you can take your foot off the gas. It's just a gigantic slog, and A lot of the reasoning for it is because they're also a very weapon-based deck. So Bravo's very based on their weapons, so they recycle a ton of their deck, and then so does Dori. So a lot of it's going to be you deciding on, am I going light on the blocking this turn, or am I going super heavy and like throwing 9 in front of this Dawnblade? And also, whenever you're using your defense reactions, try to get them in an arsenal. If you know you're going super tall on the block of 9, and going tall on that first block, you could just use it all from hand, and yeah, they'll get reprise. But maybe you hold back the defense reaction in your arsenal for another turn, because you're just trying to force them to just play around reprise and just mess that up. So I know that was a long one, but Dory is actually like, it's one of the longer slogs, but it's also kind of one of my favorite games because it's very back and forth. It's very interactive. It's not so much like autopilot because you're both kind of, you know, back and forth on taking swings at each other. I'll touch on Rhinar really quick. It's kind of a combo deck. We are bringing in, let me cut this, and we take out unmovables. So the reasoning for it is unmovable is basically a dead card. When you're considering, most Rhinars are going for a triple to a quad intimidate turn. So they're usually just kind of chipping away at you with random stuff until they can set up a Blood Rush Bellows into barraging beatdown spam. And so usually they're ending with 3 to 4 intimidates. If they have 4 intimidates, you're just screwed. So that's just how it is. If they end with 3, you can turn off barraging beatdown with 2 cards. So you would do it with a 0 from Arsenal and then just any random card that blocks. So that's the reasoning that I take out unmovables, is for you to even use them in that situation, you have to pitch. So you'd be pitching for the unmovable from your arsenal and using that card in hand, so now you don't turn off barraging beatdown. So you're still getting smacked for a ton. So I just take them out. Big thing for just playing against it is attack their arsenal. Really leverage your command and conquers, disables, and your pummels to try and push them through. Because Rhinar is fairly expensive when he's trying to get to that triple or quad intimidate. He really needs that extra card, because he's usually dumping 1 or 2 beatdowns and then a Blood Rush Bellow where he has to pitch for it and then also discard a card. So he's churning through a ton of his hand. So if you can keep them off the arsenal, it just helps out that matchup a ton. Katsu's a top one. I haven't had to play against it too much in my road to nationals. Only 3 times. I think 3 times. The biggest thing with Katsu is just figuring out if they're aggro or if they're control. Right now, everyone's on control, but the aggro is lingering around there. So I actually keep in the unmovables and actually bring in staunches and a remembrance. So let's flip this. So this is assuming that they're control, but if they're not control, we at least have a decent package of blocking 5s and 4s to stop a lot of their important stuff. So Katsu's important things are to stop are really some of their combo pieces, and by combo I actually mean the combo cards. So if it's aggro Katsu, basically it's that block up and outlast strategy, same as kind of Dori, where you're blocking up and then trying to find a pivot turn, get some damage in, and then go back into outlasting their threats. Because once aggro Katsu's kind of out of their reds, there's not much they can do to stop you. I mean, they'll come in with Kodachis, but they're just going to be pitching swinging with like these little 1s and 2s while you're coming over the top with crippling crushes, and they can't block for jack unless they're randomly throwing in unmovables for some reason. So you literally just outlast Katsu as hard as you can. If they are aggro, then really they should be coming in with like 2 Kodachis and then an attack or a combo string, and you're usually trying to just stop the second hit. So if they're going Kodachi for 1, you almost always let that through, then they Kodachi for 2. If you see that they've got a full grip, you might want to block out with a piece of armor or a card just to interrupt the mask chain, the mask of momentum. But basically, aggro Katsu is just it's a wide deck, so I actually leave in the fives for defense reactions, and then just kind of play it as block up and outlast. Controls a bit. Controls kind of there's a weird way they play where they're just kind of expecting to just kill you with Kadachi hits, which is kind of where blessing is decent, and the double remembrance comes in because you can just bring them back. But the big thing on control is like they're running 15 defense reactions or something crazy. But because they're running that all those defense reactions that they're running means they're not really coming through with anything besides Kadachi hits. So if you can just keep forcing and spamming crushes at them and just chewing through defense reactions, eventually they run out and can't bring them back. And that's why bring in the two extra remembrance. And for that control matchup, even though I'm bringing in a defense reaction in a control matchup, it's blue. So this is where you're kind of flexible in figuring out if it's aggro, I'm usually playing this, and if it's control, usually this is being pitched. Um, the the control match is just very grindy, and it gets really down to the wire. So it's either just basically throwing a bunch of stuff at them, trying to just chew through their defense reactions and get in chip damage, and then bringing back your blessings, bringing back crippling crush, or even bringing back command and conquer, and just forcing stuff through to end the game. Because once they're out of defense reactions, you just dominating attacks through is gonna push through a ton of damage because usually they don't block for much. All right, so we'll flip those. Let's go on to Kano really quick. You're bringing in the 3 null rune, and was it ditching? I usually keep tech plate just in case I want to keep a surge token rolling. I'm actually bringing in. Let's see. Am I bringing in remembrance? Yeah. I'm bringing in beltings. I'm bringing in the snag. My Kano notes are bizarre. And then just cutting reds. It was what I actually cut the spinal crush, which is kind of weird, and cut sync belows. Basically, it's you're the aggro player, but you're trying to be safe. So always keeping a card back to prevent any kind of burst shenanigans, and then eventually you can just drop your shields and then hit them with a crippling crush into a pummel, or just CNC into a pummel. There's not much they can do to block it. It just you have the tempo, you're the aggressor. The only reason I just take out the reds because they don't pitch for anything, and then just bring in random other stuff. Um, you know, these are never actually getting played; they're just getting pitched. So it really doesn't matter what you pick. So yeah, that's Kano. It's just don't get greedy, because if you get greedy, they combo you out and kill you. So we'll put all these back and bring all these. All right. Azalea is a tall deck for the most part. So Azalea, I kind of treat like a Bravo. Um, I was actually bringing in Fates too. Just I almost never see Azalea, so it's really weird. I'm cutting Rouse again and bringing in Staunches and Fates. One of the reasons that I keep cutting Rouse is because of how many cards it takes to fire it. So you need basically 4 cards, a 4 card hand. So you're playing the Rouse, pitching for it, and then you need 2 more cards to get the go again, the 13 to get go again. So you're assuming that you're going to have 4 cards. So either this thing's in the arsenal or you're playing out your whole hand, which means you're not blocking or you're barely blocking the previous turn. Um, and for something like just vanilla damage on Rouse the Ancients, I would rather just kind of block. So that's why I kind of cut that all the time. Same with like Dori and Bravo, where I'd rather be going after hit effects than just pushing vanilla damage. The only thing to watch out for Azalea is if you can use your defense reactions to block out some damage, just do it. even if it's kind of wasteful or overblocking, because they have increased attention, which basically turns their arrows into command and conquers, where you can't play defense reactions. So you can't guarantee when you're going to be able to use a defense reaction to block. So just use it whenever you get a decent attack to use it on. Yeah, I don't really see that many azaleas, so I'll just skip by that. And yeah, I was running was it running 60, is that 63 cards? Let's hit Viserai really quick. Uh, there's two ways that they're played. But there's three, but really in competitive, I've only seen two. There's wide Viserai, which basically is just a wide aggro deck, mostly pushing that 4 damage that I always talk about for on hit effects, like meet and greet. Meet and greet, was it? Meet and greet and consuming volition are the two really annoying ones. So you kind of just treat it as a wide deck, and so that's why I'm bringing in Fate for Scenes. And then I'm also bringing in Snags, and bringing in Snags for the OTK version, and then I cut Unmovables. So the reason I cut Unmovable, it just sometimes it's really clunky when you're trying to fight against a wide someone that's trying to go wide. So if you're playing it from Arsenal, it costs you 2 cards, so the unmovable and the pitch. So the average for each card that's blocking is 3, which is just 2 cards. So the reason that I run unmovables main is usually fighting attack reactions or fighting like dominate attacks, which Viserai only has kind of the one. And usually they're just pushing it so hard that there's not much you can do about it. So that's why I'm bringing in Fate for Scenes to fight the wide strategy and just keep the on hit triggers out of the question, especially like Nebula Blade. It's just really annoying. Oh yeah, and I bring in the one Null Room Boots because you kind of have to. And then Snag is for the OTK matchup, where if they're trying to do the Sonata combo and hit you with like 30 something, 20, 30 rune chance, and then draw a bunch of cards and then rouse the ancients you 3 times. Snag is how you just turn off all the rouses. So if you figure out that they're on the OTK, seeing them doing a lot of defense reactions, you just sit the Snag in Arsenal and wait. Meanwhile, you're just basically going straight up beat down. So again, if it's wide, it's that block up and outlast, kind of like playing against Katsu or a wide aggro deck. Block up and outlast, and then find your pivot points and attack them. If it's OTK, you're the aggressor, and you just try and push as much damage as you can. That's why Rouse the Ancients is back in here. Pushing the damage, trying to get through all their defense reactions, and then Snag is your backup if they pull off the OTK. Dash is another 2 versions. There's Boost Dash, which is another wide deck. Let's double check. Yep, Dash is actually kind of a gamble. So let's see, we're taking out Sink Belows and bringing in Beltings. So Dash is a bit of a gamble, mainly because if it's Boost Dash, it's that block up and outlast strategy again. Just try and get through a bunch of their threats. Theirs is just vanilla damage, but there's just a lot of it. So they're almost going to deck themselves all the time. So you can just kind of outlast them of just throwing cards into the game with blocking, preserving your life total. The gigantic combo with what is it? Maximum velocity, like the biggest they hit is 30, but they can only do that once. I've only had to play against Boost Dash like one time. The bigger threat is Pistol Dash, so Control Dash. That one you need to go all out aggro. It's a horrible matchup for Bravo. Basically, you're trying to kill them before they can set up a bunch of induction chambers and plasma purifiers, and then once they get that board set up, like there's not much you can do. They're just gonna rapid fire shoot you, 3 times a turn, or is it 4 times a turn if they have a third one, and just chew through your cards. So if you figure out it's Pistol Dash, like they flip over that induction chamber, you're blocking as little as humanly possible, just enough to keep If you figure out that you need 3 cards to attack, use the fourth card to block whatever the first hit is, and then just keep up the pressure. So that's why Zealous Beltings come in, is just you're the aggro player, and you just go all out and try and kill him as fast as you can. So let's get into Monarch. So, oh, I flipped over all my equipment. All right. So getting into Monarch, Levia is the same as Rhinar. Just attack the resources. I've never seen a Levia in competitive. Oh, I guess I have seen some people trying to do Hexagore, but I've never seen it even get into the competitive scene. So just treat it like another Rhinar, assuming they're trying to do like a Blood Rush Bellow, barraging beatdown. Going to Boltyn. Boltyn, we're cutting the Rouse again. It's one of those wide decks, and bringing in the Fates. I would, in the previous video, I talked about Mangle. I would definitely, this is one of those matchups I would desperately want to have 1 to 2 Mangles. So Boltyn, usually there's 2 builds. I've seen some other weird ones, but really the ones they're watching out for are Raiden, which is a go wide build, or Sabers, which is go wide, but they have this crazy combo of if it's a triple Lumina, I believe it's 50 damage, 52. Um, Double Lumina is 30, or no, it's like low 40s, like 42, and then single Lumina's in the 20s? I'd have to go through my notes, but I know the triple Lumina plus Gallantry Gold is in like the 50s, if they manage to pull it off. It's nutty. So if they're on the Raiden build, they're just trying to go wide. They're usually pumping 7 to 10 vanilla damage a turn, which isn't super impressive. It's more like they're just really annoying because of they swing with a charge, and then it comes in for 3, and if you block with attack reaction, it goes to a 4. Usually, I'm trying to preserve the non-attack actions to block with when I don't have a defense reaction. Just in general against Boltyn, these are actually like really good to use for blocking when you don't have a defense reaction to go over. Just be aware when they're charging, it's always you can count on that having a +1. So again, with a wide deck, it's block up, outlast them, and then just attack their resources when you can with pivots. The one thing with just Boltyn in general is his cards are extremely expensive, kind of like Rhinar, and not in the pitching expensive. They're expensive because of charging. So charging eats up a whole card. So like everything is an Enlightened Strike. So for Boltyn to really do a ton, he needs to have a lot of cards in hand, kind of like Azalea too. So if you're hitting their cards or hitting their arsenal, like it really hurts when you connect with a pummel, or even if you push through with a crippling crush. Basically, getting those cards out of their hand means their follow-up turns are kind of garbage. Like they'll just swing back for 3 or 4, and you can just 1 card block it. The scary one is Saber Boltyn. So Saber Boltyn's the same thing. It's a wide deck, but you need to be really careful with your health and keep it as high as possible, and track the Luminas and track the beacon of victories. Those are the 2 most dangerous cards that they're running around with. So if you can knock out a Lumina, either knock it out of their arsenal, knock it out of their hand. If they accidentally they get forced into putting in their soul somehow. I think there's like, if I've seen someone go into like a Lumina, and then they incidentally banish their own another Lumina to soul. Like you count those, and then that way you know kind of the threshold of where you need to keep your health above. The thing with the Saber combo, when they're going nuts with it, is if you block any of their Sabers with an attack reaction, the Saber gets buffed the +1 for the whole turn, and that's per chain link. So if you do it on the first swing of the Saber, the next one's going to have the +1, and then everyone after that. So if you are planning on if they're coming at you with the Saber combo and they actually get it off, count how many attacks they have coming, and then how many times you want to block, and you do it on the last hits of those chains. That way you're not inadvertently buffing their saber and giving even more damage. The mangle is for if they do block with that Courage of Blade hold early, then you go Showtime and you try and just mash that thing into the ground. Because as soon as you get rid of the Courage of Blade hold, like the deck doesn't really do anything. So it's still super scary, but you just want to keep your life total as high as you can. The last two, let's go Prism. So Prism, what we cut sinks, if I can select them. I'm cutting sinks and I'm cutting potion, and we're bringing in belting, and I think the extra remembrance. So this is another one like Dash where you are the aggressor. So you're trying to push damage, but there's a caveat to that. And let's get rousing because that's actually really important. Um, so you are the aggressor in that matchup, but you're trying to basically keep Prism in check from snowballing. Um, Most of the time when you fight a Prism versus Prism versus Bravo, they're going auras. So the biggest annoyance is Spectras. If for some reason the Prism is going Herald spam, you just thank them because it's kind of a free win where you just can block twice with two cards and then just come back in with a crush attack. It's just really it feels really oppressive if they're going heralds. Like Bravo just kind of punches them in the mouth and they just fall over. Um, Auras on the other hand is a completely different animal. So the dangerous part about auras with Prism isn't the specters itself, it's what they're doing on the side. Aura Prism's trying to do two things at once. They're usually trying to drop specters and annoy you and build up a shield count to shoot you every turn with a bunch of little shields. Um, that's the dangerous part is you cannot let the shield count get too high. And that's why we're bringing in go again attacks like Zealous Belting, and Rouse the Ancients is a gigantic card in that matchup. So what you're trying to do with Prism is attack their shields and keep the shield count low, and at the same time attack and break Spectres. And because we're playing Bravo, we don't have that many go again attacks, so it's usually just hammering the stupid Spectra to break it. So you're leveraging Rouse and Zealous Belting to go at the Prism first with a go again. Usually they're going to throw a block at it, but it's fine. Like, I've even pummeled Zealous Belting just to get stuff out of the way. Keep the shield count low, and then with the go again, you go into the Spectre and go smack it. I don't have time skippers in this because I talked about that in the previous video, but that's kind of an emergency button. The other major card for this matchup is actually Command and Conquer. Prism is not great at actually blocking. Even though all their Spectres are threes, they run tons of auras and instants. So I'm trying to think, there's what, 12? They run like 12 auras usually. Plus, maybe they'll run Prismatic Shield. I've seen some run Blinding Beam. But, like, was it 25% of their deck literally can't block? And so you're basically free to kind of come in unmolested on some of your attacks. Once you're not having to deal with a Spectre, you can just go straight for the face. And their only response usually is throw out another Spectre in response and then just take the damage. So Command and Conquer is actually gigantic because one of the few things that's really good for blocking in their deck is Soul Shield, and Command and Conquer just doesn't care. And I'm usually trying to actually save Command and Conquer for a pummel because there's like nothing they can do about it. Their deck is so expensive that they don't want to actually be triple blocking Command and Conquer, and then you just pummel it through and then just wreck their whole game plan. So Command and Conquer is actually really big when you're trying to just push through damage and get through other spectral shields. But that's really the biggest thing is don't let the shield count get too high because that could just spell disaster. Even if you're like just going after specters constantly and the shield count gets to like 6 or 7 and you finally get a turn to breathe and attack them, the worst feelings when they flip over Merciful Retribution and then you hit yourself for like 6 or 7. Oh, and I didn't actually flip it. I do run the Null Rune Boots in that matchup just for Merciful. Iron Rot will stop one hit. Basically, it's for whenever there's an Ode to Wrath out and you stop a shield hit, so it technically stops two. But if you're running like Null Rune, you're usually just like hammering random stuff. Your hand's usually kind of garbage anyway because you're just hammering once a turn. So just having the Null Rune out actually usually prevents like a minimum 3 damage a game if it's just mercies, but usually it's higher because their shield's out. So you just get you almost never use it, but you actually get more mileage out of the Null Rune than you do on the Iron Rot. But the time skippers might come back in nationals depending on how the meta shakes down with Kanos. Prism's one of those really tough matchups where it's like the three that I hate the most are Dash, Prism, and the Bravo Mirror. Like those are the three most hated matchups that I just don't want to deal with. And then I bring in Remembrance because it's just a long game and it's a yellow, so it goes after the library. It's the same with Zealous Belting, is it has go again. I can pitch to get a Surge token out of it, and it's yellow to go break a library, so that's just why I chose it over at Muscle. And last but not least, the big one, which is Chane. So this is the crazy sideboard. We're bringing in all of you, and we are taking out a whole host of just random stuff. So no potion. We were pulling out you, and we were pulling out, what's it, 2 rouse? 6, 7, is that right? Nope, all the rouses. Alright, so Chane is the one matchup that everyone's still trying to figure out. I'm still trying to figure it out too, but basically I've come down to a realization where I have two modes. Basically, it's full turtle or full aggro. Um, I've tried kind of going in between, and it just never really works out. If you're having to switch your game plan on the fly, it just hasn't worked out for me in dozens of games that I've played. The only ones that have really been consistent on at least getting to the end game where it's like 1-to-1 is either full aggro or full turtle. So that's why we're bringing in Staunch Responses, Fate for Scenes, and the Snags. And I'm cutting the Rouse again for I can't hold a 4 card hand for vanilla damage. It doesn't really matter. I cut the Unmovables, which seems weird, but I'll get into the Staunch Response in a second. And then Energy Potion, which I talked about in the previous video. If I'm using my whole hand to block every turn, then Energy Potion is just a liability, so I cut it. Rouse the Ancients is a block 2, so it's not as good as others. Even though it is a 3, I'm keeping the pummels in, even though they're block 2s, just because they can actually get me into that aggro matchup. And then I cut the Remembrance because the game's not going long. So basically, it's cutting a bunch of liabilities and then setting myself up to be as flexible as possible. So from what I've been playing, the Chane matchup comes down to basically your first 2 to 3 turns. Either based on what you draw, if you are drawing just kind of straight garbage of just like all blues and nothing really interesting, you're in full turtle mode. So now you got your Staunch Responses, your Fate for Scenes, and your Snag for the end Riftbind combo. And if you're not, if you're in full turtle mode, you're basically just going against a wide deck and just trying to not take any damage ever. The only thing that you're really looking to do is either get a Snag in Arsenal for the end game. If it comes in early, you're probably just going to pitch it, but get that in early, and then have a game plan for Ursa. So I'm running the Blessing and Deliverance. I will actually just sit one in the arsenal and wait for the Ursa so that I can just save 1 card and pray that I draw into another 3-cost blue and then hammer the Ursa for 6. But those are the 2 cards that you're looking out for, is just a Snag for the Riftbind combo and then a game plan to deal with Ursa. Other than that, you're trying to be as efficient as humanly possible in your blocks, so that's why there's Fate for Scenes and Sink Belows. Turn off Nebula Blade triggers, turn off Meet and Greet triggers. A lot of the stuff's coming in for 4s or 4+3, so you're trying to just be as efficient as you can in blocking. And the reason I bring in the Staunch Responses over Unmovables is Chane again is trying to go really wide and really varied with their damage. So they'll come in for like an arcane damage for one or a rune chant for one, and then swing in with the attack. So you staunch actually just lets you like throw a blue out, pitching it for the rune chant damage, and then floating two, and then you can staunch the attack. So you're being as efficient as you can, going two for two rather than like being super inefficient, pitching a blue to stop the arcane, and then you have two floating and nothing to do with it. So that's why I cut these unmovables. They just get really awkward. Um, the other way I've been playing it, and when I played that Road to Nationals, I actually went aggro every single game. And when I say aggro, is I mean full aggro. I did not block almost ever, except for like the extra card, and that was basically solely based off of did I draw like a Crippling Crush, a Spinal Crush, or a Showtime on the first turn, basically setting up to go into aggro mode. And once that happened, or once I saw that in like the first 1 to 2 turns and set that up, set that double haymaker, I just went full aggro and stopped blocking and then just raced, which is why I left the pummels in. I find it to be way more fun because now you're in this. It's this tenuous race where Chane needs all their resources. Chane needs a bunch of cards to pitch and play out of Arsenal like Plunder Runs and Art of Wars out of Arsenal. And if you're constantly attacking them with crippling crushes, disables, getting stuff out of Arsenal, pummeling their blues out of their hand, it gets really dicey for them because now they're like they want to go as wide as they can, but they just can't afford to. So it gets in this really weird balance where you're basically racing them down with just the most disruptive attacks as you can. And while you're in aggro mode, like your sync belows and your fates are still doing their thing, where shutting off on hit triggers, just saving them for those really annoying four cost attacks, while you're going still just ham on them and just non-stop swinging. Like you're not trying to hammer ever. If you have the blessing, you have the blessing, but you're really just trying to throw as much stuff, like the entire kitchen sink at them, and trying to get stuff out of their hand. Um, and when you're in aggro mode, so you still got the Fate for Scenes, but then your staunch responses and your snags, even though they were there for the control matchup or the turtle matchup, they're still blue. So if you do see them when you're in full aggro mode, they're still fuel. So that's why they're still in here. Even though I'm siding like I'm going into turtle, if I see like a double crippling crush on turn one, like Arsenal one, get the other one ready, and then basically on what was it Bravo's turn one, Chane turn two, Bravo turn three, or round three, you just go crazy and just don't stop attacking. Um, they may have Husk, but if you can just crack the Husk early, that's even better. Just assume that if they have Husk, you're not going to get through on the first crush. You're just trying to drain them of resources as fast as you can, and that's how I kind of go into the Chane matchup. Basically, there's the two modes, and this is not typically how the deck runs. Usually, I'm trying to go in and out of pivots, but with Chane, it's so meta warping that basically the only things that really work for me is full turtle or full aggro, and even then, they're still really close games. But I like the full aggro mode just because it's more fun. You're just throwing caution to the wind and then just hitting them as hard as you can. All right, so that is basically the deck tech series in a nutshell. I could go on for hours just talking about cards and discussing what people like to play and how they want to play it, but this is the deck that I ran for that Road to Nationals, and I hope it gives you an insight on playing Bravo and helps you in your future games. All right, thanks for watching.